computer. Hi, everyone. Monique here. Hi, everyone. Monique here, Intuitive Soul Savant. Welcome to the channel, and also welcome to Elina from Elinas Alchemy. And our paths crossed on this YouTube journey that we're both on here. And it's interesting when you start a YouTube channel, a lot of the notifications that sort of you get in the suggestions are always people who are starting channels themselves, and usually they've got under 1,000 subscribers. So that was really interesting on my journey, was to be able to catch a few other people, some tarot readers, Elina, and there's another fascinating lady I'm going to connect with too, who's in the Himalayas. So, you know, that's what it's all about with Pluto ingressing into Aquarius, is collaboration, working together, bringing us all together, you know, to build and to expand our consciousness for the new earth. All right. So I'm going to hand it over to Elina so she can say hello to her subscribers. Off you go.
First of all, hello everybody. Thank you for having me, beautiful Monique. And yeah, for my subscribers, hello my loves, welcome back. Today we're doing this beautiful thing with Monique Hill. I bumped on her channel just a while ago, and I was just struck by her eloquence. How Monique, how you were describing your whole experience with all of this Capricorn energy. In my chart, I related a lot. You were talking about your Capricorn energy, south nodes, north node situations. So I was immediately like struck, and I was like, well, I can relate. And then I followed the rest of your channel, and I was thinking to myself, this is some really incredible information. The way you always bring forth a transmission, and not just, you know, textbook analysis, which resonates very much with me, because something that I tell my subscribers a lot on Elinas Alchemy is that I don't want to be doing the regular astrology update with every lunation to tell you that's going to happen and this is going to happen and you're going to be feeling like this and that, but to help us see how we can just harness these energies and step into our deliberate co-creator role, where we even transcend, or we just, based on our consciousness, we allow these energies to play out very differently than what we see them playing out for the rest of the collective in an unawakened, if I may say, state and consciousness. So it's such a joy to have found you, because I feel there's so much kindred spirit connection here. But just for those who don't know, at Elinas Alchemy, Monique does run this wonderful program, Friends of the Water, where maybe we can speak a little at some point at another episode, maybe about your whole journey with water, speaking to the water. Monique is her realm, speaking to the water, doing a lot of inner healing, transformation, even down to physical illnesses. This is also something that I can relate with, because I used to have Crohn's disease. I don't have it anymore. One very important part in the healing was sitting with water, speaking to the water, consuming water that you have prayed over. So this is all what Monique is doing, along with all of the. I think, Monique, you are an alchemist. You're like me.
I think I am too. But it starts within. It starts, you know, the personal alchemist, and the way that I see my personal alchemy is from scripture, and that's the dross rising to the surface. And that's what happens when we make gold. When we heat gold in the furnace, it has to be very, very hot. And if you refer that to the human being, that's, you know, a lot of karma, a lot of obstacles, you know, a hard life, a challenging life, but at the same time you're a spiritual seeker. So, you know, it's taken decades and decades for my dross to come to the surface, and, you know, and then we come out the shining light, you know, that purity of the soul, because the soul is the gold, you know, the soul is the gold. However, in our human conditioning, all of that has been buried under the dross, you know, and the dross is our traits, our ancestral traits as well, you know. I mean, this is where this little package gets passed down the line, and they're our dysfunctional traits, the sins of the father, so to speak. Yeah, so it's a journey, and that really does sum up spirituality. We're always on this journey. We're always burning the dross. You know, we're always burning the dross, because at the end of this life, we end up as the gold with source again, you know. So, and the water, yes, we will. We will do a whole water.
I'm wondering if we could do a water ceremony at some point for our subscribers. It's crossed my mind now. You know, we could do something. Let's put it on the notepad for the future.
Yes.
Today we want to talk about astrology. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. We're going to look today, because Elina is so gifted. Elina is Greek, which I absolutely love. I have a affinity, and I know I've had past lives in Greece as well, and especially scholarly, you know. Yes, yeah, very much relate. So Elina's living in Germany though, all right, but Elina has great gifts regarding the mythology of the Grecians, and I wouldn't even do it justice by explaining, and I think it'd be a big study, but because you've grown up understanding all of that, because you're highly tuned, we're a different age, if you hadn't noticed, and it's so interesting when souls are on the ascension journey. It doesn't matter what age. We've had a very similar path, as far as having to host Pluto transiting our 6th house, you know, which brought up a lot of health issues. However, it has brought us very closely aligned with the journey of ascension, you know, which is another word for the dross coming to the surface, alchemy. Another word for it, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And this melting and this, you know, dissolution of something in order to have it emerge as something else. Absolutely. And I think it's interesting if we parallelize it with Pluto's ingress into Aquarius, which you could say rules also astrology. So in a way, we are even bringing astrology into this pot to melt it and to have it come out, hopefully, ideally, as something more high vibrational, multidimensional, so shall I say. So would you say that it is a time, along with our own personal journeys, each and every one of us in the collective as individuals, that we are being melted and rebirthed in the same way that the tools that we need in order to help us navigate or understand the blueprint, or like this whole package that you were talking about with our vices, our virtues, the little package that is being pulled, you know, I feel strongly one can use the blueprint that our natal chart can give us and see how we can even melt that eventually and use it more multidimensionally. Would you say that this is just divine timing that we are coming to talk about this, or to feel that we need more even from astrology, because our journey, like the degrees and the ways we've been melted and rebirthed, is just requiring more multidimensional tools?
I think so, for sure. And we had discussed this when we first had our meeting, that because you and I are so isolated on our journey doing this work and transcending, you know, the way that we speak astrology, is ascending as well. I mean, it's the evolution with Pluto ingressing into Aquarius, ruling astrology. Well, of course, it's going to have to go through a transformation. And I believe that each sign is getting transcended every time Pluto ingresses into that sign. Because as a Capricorn, having Pluto just through Capricorn for 15, 16 years, well, common sense would say, well, Capricorn has ascended somewhat. However, we're still looking at textbooks you know, back to the third millennium BC, because that's what astrology started, everybody. It started with the West Eurasian people, third millennium BC, and it was firstly used for calendar events, you know, for sowing and reaping, you know, that's what they were looking at.
Almanac.
Yes, like the almanac, that's right, thank you. And the cycles. And so, you know, it was evolving, and then up to the 17th century, it was a scholarly tradition. Astrology, you would go to university to study astrology, and usually astrologers were mathematicians, writers, philosophers, and you could tell me so much about that because the school was in Greece, wasn't the school was in Greece?
Yeah, it's so interesting because if you look back to ancient Greece, they used to have these, I mean, if I'm thinking about Athens, because you have to think of ancient Greece, it wasn't a country, it was a collection of smaller nations. Like in Athens, it was one Greek country, it was one nation. Then the Spartans were another nation, the Cretans, the Macedonians, the Dorians, if you had Greece even spreading so much. And so they were each having their own different kinds of schools and ways that they were educating. And so if we're looking to Athens, because that was kind of like the cradle of, you know, everything, civilization and philosophy and astronomy, astrology, you had different schools and schools of thought. And I think it's so interesting that sometimes I'm thinking we are going back, as you are saying, but we're going back a little bit conditionally because, and I mean, that's just my view right now. Maybe you
I
or
agree.
our viewers
I agree with, yeah, I think we need to take the initial energy that was allocated to each of the planets through the mythology that you're going to
exactly. But you know what I'm interested in? Sometimes I'm interested in going even further back than these schools that were established. And because in my view, we are already, like, if we want to talk about astrology, making it more multidimensional, understanding the fullness of it, we have to look beyond the patriarchal ways of interpreting astrology. And if we go back to ancient Greece, we are already talking about patriarchy. If we go to the ancient Romans, it's already patriarchy. So what interests me is to see, or if there is research or still some documentation about how the people before the Greeks, before the Romans, like really the indigenous people of Europe, for example, because just I am in Europe, you're over there and you hold also from indigenous people, but it's like the indigenous people of Europe, how were they communicating with the heavens in a manner that would allow them to navigate their life? I'm aware that they were working with deities and they were more relying on things like claircognizance and receiving visions, but I'm interested in seeing how we could even merge these two worlds and not just go as far back as Greece and find there only the roots of astrology, because this is already patriarchy. So it's meant to only be representing one side of the spectrum, that creation of the energies that creation has brought forth. So, but
and I guess all the Egyptian Egyptian studies and philosophies, they're buried in those tombs. That in the pyramids, they have to be somewhere because they're not written anywhere. They're hinted at, but not really written. But then,
esoteric knowledge that we just maybe haven't even figured out how to decode, and or even like in things like from daily life, objects that are being unearthed. Like for me personally, I'm a history buff. I've always loved archaeology. The only reason that I didn't go into archaeology was because my country, as glorious as its history is, Greece, it was, even as I was growing up, it was a very poor country that you just had to choose a profession that guarantees you're going to be able to pay the bills. So archaeology was like, what you going to do with it? So I ended up becoming an artist, another another whatever, another starving archetype. But okay, so
that's another thing that we have in common. I wanted to be an archaeologist when I was a child, and I remember saying I want to be an archaeologist or an actress, and I did the acting side and everything. And now I believe that I am an archaeologist because I've dug up esoteric knowledge, you know, since I was 17 years of age. And see, this is the thing. The astrology helped before the 17th century. Astrology helped drive the development of astronomy, okay, because it wasn't a science then. So in the end, astronomy undermined the theoretical basis of astrology. So once astronomy came along, you know, the development of astronomy was the end of it, and then astrology became a pseudoscience. So, but we're only going back to the 17th century, so that's not very long ago. That's what, 324 years, so to speak. So, you know, when people question astrology, and had done since I was 17 years of age, nobody wanted to talk to me about astrology, and you know, I was rejected. You know, however, there was that soul belief, you know. And when I started studying, I knew I'd done it before. It was easier learning the symbols to astrology than it was the scientific tables of elements and metals and what have you. It was easy for me to pick it up, and somewhere at 17 years of age, I thought, I've done this before. I've been here, done that, which then encouraged the philosophy of multidimensionality, reincarnation, and then multidimensional reality. And that's where we are headed, you know, especially with Pluto ingressing into Aquarius. Astrology is going to expand, and you know, many of my subscribers, and I'm sure what I was attracted to you for, was we really need to bring the teachers on planet. We really need to bring any teaching we have into the 4D, you know, to get across the message of how the energy feels of each of these planets, okay? Because by knowing your chart, our chart should be so familiar to us, you know, like we should know every degrees, what house everything is in it. And once it comes to mind, that means that we are integrating the truth of the blueprint within, because that blueprint gets hidden, and there's a lot of conflict in the blueprint as well. You know, and we are ascending and expanding, and you know, Mercury is our 3D, Uranus our 4D, and Neptune our 5D energy. And Neptune this year will be starting a whole new cycle into Aries, right? And that's a couple of 150 odd year, you know, around. Yeah. So, you know, if you're alive today, you know that something's going on out there. Life is just not the same. But we can't poo-poo astrology. There's no way we can, you know, but we really need to go back and get what we've forgotten. And astrology and the power of the numbers and healing modalities and alchemy and all that sort of stuff. We cannot throw it out with the bath water. You know, we can't throw the baby out with the bath water. However, it must mature in our eloquence of astrology, because then it hits people's hearts. And if it hits people's hearts, then they know it's true. It's not, will I believe that? It's not a religion. There's no way it's a religion. I can't brainwash you, you know, I can't brainwash you with astrology. It you know, it's something that you would feel.
Exactly. It's not about belief, because as you say, then we are basically exiting one religion in order to just go get stuck into another. And I feel we need to basically, how the way I see it, how it's going to mature is when we pair it with this ability of clear knowing that we develop as we go further deeply into studying, like not just like various healing modalities and esoteric. So we're talking again about alchemy. We're coming again to that, merging like a whole array of different things and faculties and abilities in order to be able to interpret correctly the hints and the points, and to transcend even, because I feel like when we go with this textbook thing, like I see a lot of people just being like, oh yeah, your moon is in there, so you must be so and so. And I'm like, no, you are getting now into a religious dogma type of thinking, and you are not interpreting, you're just you know, a parrot basically. And that's, you know, I mean, I don't mean to shade anybody, but if you see the majority of YouTube right now, it's just people parroting what they find on other websites or what a book told them it means. Even with the tarot, because I'm currently working on a tarot school that's going to be launching on Patreon when I manage to finish it. Even with the tarot, yes, let's honor the origins and the roots where it came from. Certain systems are created to help us navigate the 3D, but that doesn't mean that we're not meant to break out of this mold. And Monique, you do come from an older generation. I do feel the need to express gratitude for always like people like you, people that sometimes we call the crazy of the village, especially in the older days, because it was. If now it's not so common that spirituality is becoming this huge trend, imagine back then what a trailblazer you had to be. Because you created a platform so that a generation like mine, the Pluto in Scorpio generation, where we are all about going deep, of course we would bring this up in the surface and make it big, like astrology, esoteric sciences, of course, but without the platform of you guys, I don't think we could run. And if we wouldn't run, then I don't know how we could even have these further discussions of like, okay, we've made astrology so normal day to day. Now let's even talk about expanding it. You're like,
well, the third, I can remember, you know, 41 years ago, picking up the astrology book that was given to me by an old man in a caravan park. And it was Linda Goodman's Love Signs, big blue, big book. Everybody had that who was learning astrology. It was written in the 70s, you know. And he said to me, when's your parents born? And I told him, and he said, you're born of love. And that's the Leo Libra. And I thought, yeah, I am, because I was the first child and they did want me, you know, and they were madly in love with each other, so young and naive. But, you know, I had a lot of trouble growing up in my family as the scapegoat and the one who was going to bear the ancestral wounds, you know, on my shoulders. The reason and what I got the most out of astrology was compassion, because I had compassion, because you go and you study your family and go, oh yeah, oh ah, to see, you know, the synchronicity, you can see it all there. You know, and it was like, because in that day there was no therapy. The Americans were having therapy. I've got to see my therapist, you know, and Australians would laugh at that. And we had no therapy. So astrology was my only therapy at that age.
But
and
I
it was
feel that
mainly
nowadays is very, very limited. I mean, you know, I feel like therapy nowadays is very, very limited. It's
even hard to get a therapist, because, you know, that when you were speaking before, it reminded me the other day, there's a girl at the gym, 32, 33 years of age or something. She said to me, I was in the mental health ward this time last year, and she's the sweetest thing, got a couple of kids, you know, works really hard on her body. And all I could say was, you should try to align with some sort of spiritual practice to anchor you, to hold you up. She's got nothing. And okay, you and I both agree that we don't want the religion, because we've been brought up with orthodox religion, but the people need something. The people need something. And I'm talking today, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't have an anchor, there's no guide. Their consciences have been seared from the hardcore violence and pornography and all of this darkness that they've consumed, and social media and fake news and confusion and what have you, and the financial status of the middle class. You know, it's we need astrology now. People need astrology, and it's starting. You know, it's definitely starting. But as you said, if you get around and have a look around on YouTube or what have you, it's still in the ego state, because it's like love. I'm going to need somebody to make me whole. What is my star sign match? Who can I marry? You know, just from the sun sign. You know, so we're still in early days, but we're still in early days with Pluto ingressing Aquarius, you know, and the collective are going to have a Pluto dark night of the soul. And if everybody is having a dark night of the soul as one entity, then the individuals, it's not going to look pretty. It's definitely not going to look pretty. And, you know, the individuals are going to have a dark night of the soul because the collective is.
And they're going to need means to navigate it, but tools that are exactly not taking us back to the limitation of all those ages ago, but something that helps us transcend, because the dark night of the soul has come from exactly seeing how these old ways of perception are not working for us. So should we go ahead and talk a little bit of planets, signs, maybe unpack this whole thing?
All right, well, we start with the sun. So do you want to give us a little background on the sun gods for the Greeks? Because you know a little bit about the Roman god as well, don't you? Like,
well, with the ones I'm a little bit familiar, but the thing is that the sun is always like this, it's always there. It's what gives life. It's the light. We're not even talking about, like, for example, you have Uranus, which is like the sky god, and in the Greek myth, it's like Gaia birthed Uranus and then chose her as her equal to mate with her. But with the sun, we never hear about where it got created. It's like it was the being that was always present. And it's like the whole, for example, Greek nation was associated with the sun. For example, we were never called Greeks, we were called Hellenes, Elinas.
The Hellenistics.
El, from the word ilios, sun. So we were the people, the beings of the sun. But what that meant, it wasn't the physical sun as much as it was actually the Christ light, I feel. And when I'm talking about Christ, I'm talking about the Christed being. I'm not talking about Jesus Christ. Jesus was a Christ. I'm talking about the Christhood within. So to me, if we go back to looking at the sun, and maybe even in our chart, it's maybe exactly, we say it's how our life force energy wants to be expressed in this lifetime. But I'm like, okay, where do we have the possibility to step into our Christhood? And you see, the sun was always associated with gods such as Apollo. Apollo was important for the Romans, but also Apollon in the Greek mythology was also a god that had to do, it was a little bit similar with Mercury in terms of he was playing his harp, he was the god of music, he was very eloquent, he was very good in the, communication and all of these things, and it was associated with the light. Looking even further down, but I have to question how much of that was used for political propaganda. You might have seen Alexander the Great being associated as the sun god, Pharaoh, even when he went into, like Alexandria and Egypt and stuff like that. So I feel like the more we move into, like, further into history, the more these concepts from the esoteric, they became corrupted, more exoteric to facilitate like certain political propaganda. Like, but if we go back, maybe we can still find a little fraction, a little something of the original essence. So I would say the sun, to me, from all of these things that I just mentioned, I would go to the heart of it to speak about the Christhood, the divine Christ, solar logos, the solar logos, which is literally the spark that kick-started life. So you would say it is the divinity.
So when a person's born, in the tropical chart, we'll just speak about, the sun was in a section of the sky, in your case Gemini, in my case Capricorn, but it is the light, and it's the Christ consciousness.
Yes, and maybe that's exactly the role because the Christ is, I mean, think about the light. When can there be light? When there has been darkness. So maybe our role is to bring the Capricorn or the Gemini or whatever your sun sign is, to bring it into alignment with the Christ essence.
Well, the sun ruling Leo is the one that walks into the room and lights up the room, whether they know it or not, whether they feel they deserve it or not. And the ego then takes place, you know. So from that Christ consciousness to be embodied, where we've gained our ego, and then the ego defines, in my case Capricorn, in your case Gemini. However, the sun is the sun, and the sun shines. So doesn't matter what star sign, you don't have to be a Leo. However, we all do need to shine. And unfortunately, over the millenniums, you know, the sun gods were honored. They were honored. And if we can integrate that honoring of ourselves as little suns, you know, we are moving towards Christ consciousness. I mean, it's something that teachers don't like to say, because we've been humbled, you know. But I very much integrated Christ consciousness on my journey, you know, forward, so to speak.
It's interesting that you say we've been humbled, because I wanted to say, the moment you mentioned about the Leo energy, let's keep in mind, again, that's why I mentioned political propaganda, even back then, because the Leo is associated with kings and queens. So we're talking about politics. This is the ego, and we've been humbled. Okay, so we are being asked, we are being called to step out of the 3D ego. I'm the king, I'm the queen, look at me, and into the Christed light of I am.
I am. Yes, and it is like a crown. Okay, so it is like a crown. However, it's a higher frequency, because it's more or less, with my crown, I deserve abundance. Like, abundance is mine. You know, the shame has left, and so the ego comes down. But there's still that knowing that we have a crown of God, of holiness, you could say. Holiness.
Yes.
Holiness. Yes, so it's not an ego, I've got a crown, I deserve everything. It's, I've got a crown and I do deserve everything.
I got a crown, and I can be a conduit. I can be a channel. I can be an anchor of this abundance for the world, not just me. I'm the king, I get to keep this lower ego, but higher ego. Because if you look, even the avatar Jesus Christ, he even came, he said, I didn't come here to teach peaches and roses and flowers, I came here to teach the sword. So even there, the sword to me is a lot about sovereignty, personal sovereignty and power. So it's not to not have ego at all, but to understand the higher ego, to embody the higher ego. Because, you know, I bet Jesus Christ as an avatar, I bet he had some really good boundaries. I bet he had some really strong sense of self with capital, though, and not exactly these lower limited 3D archetypes of, you know, it reminds me a little bit, do you know Game of Thrones?
I haven't had time.
Okay, I have to say I don't follow mainstream media so much, but sometimes I do choose to watch certain things because I feel there's something that I can learn from it. So in
Yeah.
Game of Thrones, and many of our listeners might relate because it's like it was such a big series. There's a scene where Joffrey, this petty little king, is saying all the time, "I am the king, I am the king. You're gonna obey me." And his older uncle, I think he's like, a king that has to say he's the king, I'm not sure he holds the power.
That's right. That's exactly right. And what has upset me, I guess, and many people aren't aware, but you know, we've been told not to hide our light behind a bushel, was the word, you know, behind a tree. And I know how difficult it has been for myself to shine my light after being shut down, you know, for decades. For, you know, no, we don't want to see your light. We don't want to see your light, you know. Oh, no, the light's too bright. The light's too bright. And besides, I don't know how to shine my light. So you're not shining your light either, you know. And that's where our source, that's where our growth is. That's where our health is. That's where the joy of life is.
Yes, and especially if you have even placements. I mean, I relate so much to what you're saying because personally, I have Pluto in the 5th house and I have Chiron in Leo in the 1st house. So I relate totally. So especially if you have such placements, pair it together with what your sun is doing, and you will get more information about how to come to shine, to embody like this divine solar logos and be this I am.
Not from that egotistical 3D level. That's right.
Yeah.
That owning your light. So if you're born Gemini sun, you're out there communicating. You're not shy at the parties. You're giving information here, there, and everywhere because you're listening. You're active listening. So you're learning from listening to others. You know, all of the signs we could go through, and yes. That is our destiny. Really, is to shine. However, yes. It's a minority. It's a minority, and the ones that have broken through and shined have been taken advantage of in industries, you know, that are
absolutely. The problem, I think, is the ways and the manners that the social structure is telling you that this is what it means to shine. Because I feel there are so many different ways to shine, but what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear it's your time to shine? You're thinking of yourself probably under a spotlight on stage in Hollywood, Marilyn Monroe type of stuff, or J-Lo, and you're like, that's not quite what I want. So you even think that I'm not the person that is seeking to shine. I am more introverted. And it's like, no, it's just that's not it.
So therefore, moving forward, the ascendant has always been the mask that the sun sign hides behind, this mask. So I'm a Capricorn world. However, I'm a Leo, you know, like,
yeah.
So therefore, we're going to have to look at the ascendant a little differently.
That's so interesting that you're saying it, because I've always been a little conflicted about the ascendant. Is it this, or is it exactly something that we are supposed to ascend into? I don't know. I'm very conflicted, especially
Rick Levine. I've heard Rick Levine say that our rising sign is basically our next life, you could say. So we're learning to be that rising sign, even though we're projecting it outwards. I pick a lot of people's star signs, and if it's not their sun sign, it's their ascendant that I've picked, you know. But really, when I learned textbook astrology, the ascendant was the mask that we put on to hide the sun sign, because the sun is vulnerable and the moon is
interesting. It's interesting for me. I have this Cancer ascendant, And I feel that from like taking my Gemini sun away from the 3D superficial thinking of myself, this, that, taking it into its Christed, or at least trying to into its Christed version, I think it made me closer to the positive polarities of a Cancer, such as being motherly. I don't have children, I don't intend to, but being motherly towards my students, my people, my family, it's something that I am recognized for the whole time. So
you do give off, that nurturing energy, that soft, sweet, nice place to land energy as a Gemini, you know. But as we discussed, Elina is 1 degree Gemini, so she's early Gemini and she's got a few Taurus placements. So you're not the typical Gemini. You're not the typical Gemini. No, you're not the typical Gemini, but because of that Cancer rising, because that you're able to connect with your emotional body, and in having relationship with Geminis, especially water signs and earth signs, we find it a little difficult to have relationships with Geminis because number one, they're not as grounded as the earth sign, and number two, they're not as emotional as the water sign. So if we've got these if we've got the elements, you know, different elements in our chart that can round us off a little bit, and trick the astrologer into guessing what sign you are, you know, because yeah. So that's the sun. So you know, but even the sun has changed. The sun was very yellow when I was growing up as a child. Now the sun is very white. It's a white light, yes. And I actually was taking photos of the sun from 2012 onwards and the changes that the sun were emitting. And we know that with the sun flares too. You know, we know this sun is ascending as well, because that's the law, is everything's ascending. If we're ascending, Gaia's ascending, all the other planets are changing as well. The whole solar system is stepping up, leveling up energetically and frequency.
I even feel that depending on where you are in the planet, and that's going to be very unique and different to each and every one of us, because where we move in the planet, we could even get some hint of the energies at play when we look at our astrocartography, which is another passion of mine. Like my good friend Ralph McIntyre is like this incredible astrocartography master, and I've had the joy to sit with him quite a lot and to learn from him. But something that I've noticed is, let's say in Greece, where is my Mars astrocartography line, the light, I perceive it as very golden, very fire-like. Even when I had no idea about astrocartography, I've always said when I am in Greece, the light looks like a fire. And when I'm here in Germany, which by the way is my Neptune line, the light here is almost silvery, almost translucent.
Like white. Yeah, like, and I'm on my Neptune line now, aren't I? Yeah. So
you're seeing it more also. What do you perceive the light as where you are at?
It's more a white, silver, you know, I could say white, silver, same. But it's, you know, we have orange sunsets here in Australia, you know, as the sun's setting over the mountains, it all goes orange. But if you're looking at the sun, it's very white in the summertime and wintertime. No, it's changed. It's definitely changed, and Australians will attest to that, especially the older generation, because we remember what the sun looked like back then. So it's ascending, it's changing right in front of our eyes, you know, right in front of our eyes. But, you know, speaking of the sun, and okay, we use Leo, but we don't even need to use Leo. Everybody should be, listen to me, shooting. Everybody needs to be moving towards shining their light and coming out from under the rock. And the only way we're going to do that is by doing the shadow work of shame, because shame and fear hide our light. They won't allow, shame and fear that we have on board hides our light.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I was gonna talk about the Pluto in the fifth house, but I guess I should keep it for another video because this is not a Pluto video. We keep on going back to Pluto. See how our lives have been changed by this very low, because it's the Capricorn energy we have in our charts, and we always have to go back to talking about Pluto, but we have to keep it in check because we are here to talk today about the planets and the signs and their energies.
And we'll just do the personal planets today. We'll do the personals today. And look at the generational planets another time, I guess. So will we look at the moon? So something that sort of interests me about the moon is it casts a shadow, right? So it took a while for me to understand that things are hidden with the moon. When you're dealing with the moon, and tarot especially, tarot readers, when they pull a moon card, they will say something's hidden. And that's all got to do with the shadow that the moon makes with the sun.
I think it has to do with this twilight that you don't see clearly. Imagine walking in the night and you have to navigate through a forest, and you only have, even if it's a full moon and a very like strong one, you're going to see that the light is very limited. You have very few options in front of you. You might be seeing something, but it's not accurate what you are seeing. And so it's a little bit tricky. So I think in regards to the tarot, I would say even the high priestess, to me, the high priestess is about things that are hidden. But the moon is even more tricky because it's like, it's not hidden, it's in front of you, but you see it as something else because the light casts an illusion. So it's not, that's, I think it's even more crazy because you don't go, something's hidden, I need to watch out, I need to be prepared. You go, oh, it's a bush. Oh, yeah, I see. So you think you see, and then you go closer, it's not a bush, it's an ugly man in a black cloak. And it's like, ta-da!
Yeah.
So yeah. I thought you were a bush. So I think the moon can have the potential to lead us to, very dark places if we don't have the second sight.
Right. Well, that second sight, well, so the moon ruling Cancer sign in astrology is emotions. I mean, back then in basic textbooks, the moon was the emotions. So really that whole emotional realm of ours is confusing to navigate, very confusing to navigate.
And you need perspective. You need the perspective that only intuition can bring you. So really this perceptiveness, this second sight, you need this to help you navigate it differently. Exactly. You think you see something, but actually it's something else. And I always like to parallelize it with, do you know, like in these movies where it's like the martial arts master who gets blinded, and then he has to learn to do the martial arts blind. So he has to learn to perceive space and everything. That's, to me, that's the analogy. So without that ability to see, even when your eyes are deluding you, without that, we could be hitting a wall. So the emotions could be leading us to so it's not the balance of emotions with logic. No, it's emotions with intuition, clear knowing, ability to see, the wisdom to see beyond the smoke screen of emotions.
Well, then you need Mercury, and that's why they work along that line, that lineage. So the moon, yes, it is light, but it shines in the night sky. So it's the emotional realm that most humans are not friends with, are not intimate with. Cancer sign, if you speak with them, they love their emotions. They actually get off on sitting around getting all mushy, whether the emotions are good, whether they're bad. And then the polar opposite of Cancer is Capricorn. And when they have emotions, Capricorn, it's like, God, get it out of me. I haven't got time for this. I don't want to feel this. it's heavy enough being Saturn ruled without having to delve into the emotional body, you know. However, you know, this is the structure. So, you know, Capricorn, Saturn rules the structure of society and ourselves, but our bone structure. So
you know what I found interesting? Oh, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you? By the way, I do have to
well, the point is that we're not friends with our emotions. So our moon, you know, the archetype of the moon for the collective needs to be worked on as well. The same as the sun. If we're not shining our light, you know, that archetype needs to be worked on. And it's a majority that aren't. You know, we're not talking to the choir here. Well, we probably are talking to the choir, but you know, when you look out into the world and there's many lost souls, and this is why you and I have had the journey that we've had to be able to help humanity collect the collective on this journey of Pluto ingressing Aquarius. So the sun to shine and the moon, we've got to get in touch with this emotional body until it gets to the point, you know, that it becomes just like laughing. You know, those sad motions, when the body gets up and wants to release that energy, because that's all emotion is energy, and the body wants to release it. And this morning I had I had to sit there and I could feel my heart chakra, like a pressure on my heart chakra, and I just had to let it come through. But I didn't always do that for 40 odd years. So, you know, those emotions were stuffed right down, but the energy was still in the body. And the energy still in the body leads to addictions and dysfunctional behavior. We know that.
Thing that you parallelize it like that with, because as an energy healer, something that I'm noticing when I'm working on the heart center of someone, usually the throat goes hand in hand as well. You can't clear something from the heart chakra without having an emotional reaction, like someone crying or someone going like this. It's always so. What's in here needs to also to be expressed. So I think it's great that you're saying it has to become like laughter, like crying. Like it has to be. So this is all intertwined. You know what else is interesting? When I look at the moon, the myths of the moon. So basically, in ancient Greece, we had the moon was goddess Selene. So even the crystal selenite that we have, it's really this symbolism of like reflecting the light, like the moon. So, and the thing is that Selene was siblings with the sun, and during the daytime, the sun would ride its chariot across the sky.
Yes.
You know, and then when nighttime came, it was the time that he was going home, and Selene was riding her chariot across the sky. So to me, this shows also, because you mentioned exactly also the sun, it's without the one, you can't have the other. These are two forces that you would say they are so polar opposites, sun and moon, but they are like, you can't think the one without the other, and you shouldn't, because then you don't have this balance. You don't have this, you know? So I think it's interesting that hearing you parallelizing all of these things, to me, my brain went to this myth of this interchanging, the patrolling of the skies, basically, by the two.
Yeah. I thought about that when we were speaking about the sun, because I've learned it from the Nordic, from the runes, because they speak about the horse, not chariot, the horse carrying the sun disk across the sky. The horse, yes, the horse. And in my life, I've felt like that something was holding me back, like reins. When in my younger days, I'd want to just go ahead and do my ego from ideas, but there was like a force that felt like reins holding me back.
Was it Saturn in the corner somewhere?
Yes, that was Saturn in the corner holding me back. However, I was wanting to go and shine in ego. See, that's why you've got to have that moon, because the moon is receptive, and the moon is that feminine energy that sits back and waits. Where will I shine my light? Not just, but I'm out to shine my light. with the moon, there's that receptivity and inquiry and intuition, as you say, which guides, that feminine guides then that masculine light where to shine.
Yes. Interesting.
So that moon, we've got a lot of work to do with our moon energy, because, you know, we've come from this society pre-COVID that everybody's running around crazy on the wheel, you know, on the.
Oh, and after COVID, it's like I see that it has gotten. It's weird because I feel like there's two realities. In the one reality, the people are like, no, I prioritize different things now. And in the other reality has gotten so manically crazy.
They're
It's
hustling.
like,
they're hustling.
yeah, the hustling, now is the time to travel everywhere where we didn't manage to travel our whole lives. And, you know, also during the pandemic, for me as a music artist, I noticed that suddenly everybody was trying to do everything on social media, like suddenly, and this is what damaged way more than ever previously the arts, the music people. It's like hilarious. You open your Instagram and you just see reels of people just drinking coffee, kind of like, you know, these B-rolls all the time. So now I can't be a musician. I have to film me drinking coffee just so that I create a B-roll reel that says, this is my song. I'm posting this reel for 365 days until my music blows up. It's like it's, you know, because it's like suddenly we have to, we don't have shows, we don't have concerts, we can't go on tour. What, stay at home? What do you mean stay at home with myself? No, I'm gonna hustle the heck out. I'm gonna hustle the soul out of my dead body on social media, and I'm gonna build, you know. And it's like it doesn't work. Also, I have to say, we need to be a little bit, and that's like a little wedge in here. I have to wedge it. We have to be a little bit discerning. So again, we're going into moon, sun. We have to be discerning as to how much of all of these things are organic, and how much of these trends and events that, you know, create trends of behavior, and even in industries and in people individually, one-on-one, how much of that is not organic, is inorganic, and is created in order to create certain trends that pour more money into certain pockets, and, you know, take advantage of certain demographics. Why I'm saying this, because I will parallelize it with the spirituality community, and to the things that we were talking at the very beginning, in terms of like, you know, oh, your sun sign is here, this is your soulmate. And even worse, you know, put 333 in the comments and you'll meet your soulmate. So
there's some funny stuff out there. There's some, when you're awakened and your ego is, yeah, when your ego, you know, when you've worked through your ego and you look out into the world, I mean, firstly, you got to have compassion to do it, because it could be frustrating. But there's a lot of charlatans. There's a lot of half-cocked teachers and great marketers, great with the technical, you know, on the computer and what have you. Not my generation, the generation after me that had phones, you know, and the internet. I grew up without the internet. You know, so there's been a big burst out there, but I'm not worried anymore, because once Uranus ingresses into Gemini next year in July, wow, you know, that is just going to change everything up. And, you know, you're building a business online, I'm building a business online, and we've even discussed it between ourselves, you know, building a business in the new earth as an ascending being is very, very different to the Capricorn corporate business that's been, you know, pushed down our throats for the last 100 years. You know, it's absolutely very different.
You have to work with life, with spirit, with your own soul very, very differently, and you have to respect that. Because do you remember when we were saying, like, you know, I start the week with my Fridays full, like a full calendar, and I know inside of me that this soul of mine doesn't have like the energy to fuel all of that. And it's like, but I don't want to cancel. And then it's like that person cancels, that person cancels. So you always end up doing the work that was really in alignment with your best interest.
I did it today. I woke up and had a jam-packed full day from like 9:30 until 9:30 tonight, right? Because I'm in the old, it's going to take time, everybody, all right? Like, there's no perfection in this ascending business, and it's bloody slow for this Capricorn's liking. It's very slow, the ascension process. Eh?
But it's like spirit has your back, you know what I mean? Suddenly things are orchestrated on their own, like that person cancels, or
I cancelled. I ended up cancelling because the warning for this month, like, we're making this video, Mercury has ingressed into Gemini, so now we've got the sun, a new moon there in 2 days' time. We've got Venus, Mercury's in there, and Jupiter's in there. So there's 5. The 2 luminaries and the other 4 planets are lighting up Gemini, and this is our communications, and this is our diary is more Virgo. However, it's our daily routine, this Gemini energy, and we can't, if you're ascending, the old school rule book has to go out the door, because you cannot live the same life as I did in 20 odd years ago, where you worked 7 days a week and you were running on adrenaline and you were reaching out and striving and reaching out. It's not going to work. The energy on planet is not going to allow people to do that without getting sick. And it's a sickness that pulls people back down to sit still, to awaken. So if you're awakening out there, viewers, it's a whole different set of rules. We're going to discuss this. In business, it's a different set of rules. In owning homes, it's a different set of rules. In trading, in your local community, it's a different set of rules. And it's going to be a different set of rules international trading as well. So
mentioning this with Uranus being in Taurus, and I think you mentioned Uranus going into Gemini soon, and how you parallelize it with exactly, if you don't find the way to sit down, illness is going to make you sit down. And I think, do you see the trends? I'm following some trends to see exactly how all of these energies are being playing out in the 3D, in the common world, and I see everybody is moving to a farm, and everybody is making now handmade bread, and because they all had physical illness that made them reprioritize what's important to them. And I think and that's great. It changed economies, it changed our priorities, more earth oriented. But I think when Uranus goes into Gemini, the illness that you speak of, I think it's going to be more, exactly, it's going to be a mental health illness. Everything on Mercury, Gemini rules. So people will just understand, I guess, that I can't do this. So I have to create change. I can't do this. I'm fatigued, I'm brain fogged, I have psychological issues.
For people like myself, for very willful people like myself, an earth sign, because an earth sign only thinks 3D. Yeah, oh yeah, they only think 3D. I mean, we have to find those other parts of our chart we've got to look at our Uranus and to elevate, because an earth sign's just what I see in front of me. I believe I'm here to work hard. I'm dependable employee, and I'm here to make money because I've been told I've got to have a house on some land. That's 3D. And earth signs, we've got to rise above that through the other elements of our chart. But it's going to be very, very different. And my point was that very strong personalities, they're going to find it difficult because it's not working the same, and the energy isn't there to do all that we used to be able to do, to fill our diary from 9:30 to 9:30 at night. I mean, that was nothing to me when I was in my 30s and I was building a company, but in the end, it only lasted 6 years because my body collapsed. But 2012 was coming, and there was always another road for me. You know, I had to learn the hard way so I could learn and bring this to you guys today. It's not going to work. And it's scary and it's frustrating. You know, I'm glad that we met, because we've compared notes about how we're living. And we're same. You know, we can't. I tried to go, okay, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm going to do a video, and I'm going to do it every week, all year, like the other astrologers do. No. That's not going to work, because as an intuitive, it's daily, it's momentarily, it's when the intuition flows, when the inspiration flows. You know, I may get up on that morning and have to process all this other stuff, you know, and not have the energy to give the energy to other people. The energy is needed for myself, to feel myself. So
in regards to the YouTube thing, especially, you know what I have noticed, that even reality starts reflected, like giving me feedback where I'm like, okay, I gotta respect that, because exactly, you start the week and you're like, of course I can make like 3 videos in a week. And it's like, no, you don't. But when you do, like, so I've learned to embrace the flow. There are weeks that I sit down and I do 10 videos a week, and I put them all out, and I'm like, fine, now they came to me, now I'm putting them out. And there's weeks where I don't do anything, and the channel stays silent for a week, and then the next week we come back again with 10 videos. So I have had to learn to honor the, you know, sparks of inspiration when they come, but I also see that when I tried to force it, or even when I tried to you know, create this 3D consistency that YouTube theoretically wants you to have, of like every
any business, any business,
it's like, okay, if 1 week I created 10 videos, I'm gonna put 3 this week, 3 the next week, 3 the other week. No, I see that YouTube, suddenly I get 10 views on my videos. So I'm like, oh, so my consistency is not rewarded.
No, it's not.
Is this a thing with YouTube? No, it's a thing with reality, giving me the feedback that no, you have to allow it to flow as it comes.
That's right, because the right listener will be coming in alignment with that energy as well. And what I've watched, all of the tarot card readers and teachers, astrology and numerology, that I subscribe to, they don't put the videos out regularly like clockwork, as if they were walking into an office, you know. And I know my personality with the North Node Gemini, and you being a Gemini, well, you and I are in it for the long game. So, you know, I'd get bored if after 2-3 years, if I'm doing that every day, oh my God, I'd be very bored. So it's an organic unfolding, the ascension path. It's organic.
Also, the kind of content you love. My channel, Elinas Alchemy, has transformed so many times. It's like, it started as a purely a tarot channel, and even before that, the very first video that I did was a video to talk about angels, because, you know, I was in the midst of huge transformation. I was working with my angels, and I just did this one video to talk about angels, and it blew up. But then exactly, it was like, I'm not here to talk about angels every single day. It's just one aspect of my whole journey. I'm an alchemist. What do I do most? Oh, right now I do a lot of tarot. So it started being like this tarot channel, and then I was like, yeah, but now I'm doing more energy healing, and I've learned this and that. So in the end, it's been changing incarnations all the time, and that's why I named it also Elinas Alchemy eventually, because it was like, there's no one genre, there's no one thing. It's a mishmash of things, because when someone comes to me for a healing, I might put my hands close to them, I might just pray over them, but I'm also just pull out some crystals, I might pull out some singing bowls, I might heal them with sound, I might just do a reading for them, because actually they don't need energy clearing, they just need a little bit perspective to help them move on. So I'm like, it's not just one thing. So it's an alchemy, it's like and I think this sums up not just my experience, but the experience of exactly business in this new earth era, so to speak.
We're going to do a video on that together too, because it's changing. And when you're new to it, you know, the mind is saying, oh, but you know that this is how marketing goes, and you know what's suggested, and social media likes this and that, like, you know, no, you've got to let it go. You've got to let it go and allow it to organically unfold. And that's, you know, with all of the new spiritual businesses that people are awakening, you know, up to. They're awakening to it, whether they stay at it, you know, whether they're believing they're going to make a lot of money out of it. I'm not too sure. You know, I mean, you and I both know we have to release our ego attachments to the finances, to readings, how many, all of that, and just allow source, because that's called co-creating. That's what true co-creating is actually about.
Yeah, I mean, living on my Neptune line, I have had a master class on that for the last 10 years to just understand that money comes in when you surrender. Like, do you have something that you can do that rehabilitates the energy of people or of you? Good. And so do that and just surrender. And it's like, I always have had enough 10 years here on my Neptune line, but not in advance. It wasn't this thing that every first of the month I get this chunk of money so I know what the rest of my month is going to look like. No, it's always like first of the month I get just as much money I need for the next 3 days. Then in 3 days I'm like, now what? And then the phone rings and I'm getting money for the next 10 days. And I'm like, so it's also the amounts of money that come in are also very fluctuating. Always enough, but always very fluctuating. You're sitting there, you have 10 grand come your way. And you're like, imagine if every month is 10 grand. And then next month is like 300. And you're like, okay. But
we're sort of talking about Mercury now, aren't we? We're talking about the mind.
Exactly.
Like we're talking about the mind now, Mercury, because that's our next personal planet after the sun and the moon. We've all got to have a mind because we're humans. We have to have a mind, everybody. However, we can transcend the mind. And the only thing really I know about Mercury mythologically is that it was the trickster. Even in the runes, the Nordic gods, you know, they knew Mercury as the ancient trickster. You know, so that
the ancient Greek perspective was that Mercury wasn't called Mercury. Mercury was called Hermes. So it was Hermes, and it was the psychopomb, which means psychopombos in ancient Greek is the carrier of souls. So Hermes or Mercury had multiple responsibilities, but was responsible for the communications, was taking the messages from Olympus mountain where the gods resided, was taking it down to the real world. When people had a dream or an information, it was always Hermes credited for the information, good ideas or knowings and stuff like that, and was also carrying the souls into the afterlife. And so it was a lot this, okay, transportation and communication. What do you need? I get it from A to B, you know?
Yeah, well, Mercury, Hermes, was allowed to go to Hades as well. Was allowed.
Exactly.
Yes, so Mercury is the only planet that was allowed to go down into Hades to deal with Pluto. So Pluto and Mercury, you know, were communicators. So that you're going through your Pluto transformation, and what's getting in the way? The mind. Because the mind.
I think it's interesting that if you look at the iconography of Hermes, it's got these flying sandals. It's sandals that have little wings, and also wears a helmet that has little wings. And exactly was the connector between the heavens, earth, and the underworld.
So the heavens would, because I'm doing a lot of work on the mind, because I'm doing this meditation mentorship, right? And our attention is on the breath. And after you've done many hours of meditation on the breath, the second stage is that you're able to have that peripheral awareness, right? You've got your attention on the breath, and you can actually also observe or be aware of the thoughts that are going on, the madness that's going on at the same time. So you're multitasking, you know, but it takes many sits of meditation to get to that point where the mind, where you're so conscious of what the mind is doing. Because up until, you know, 50, my mind was doing what it wanted to do, and unless I was, you know, sitting meditating, so to speak. But the mind had the power over me. The mind was in full control over my body, over my eating habits, over my emotions, that was causing my emotions. Even I've got to be careful every day I wake up. What are you thinking? No, we're not going off in that direction, Hermes. Thank you very much, because it's not true. You're a big fat liar. And it's a liar. The mind is a liar. That's the trickster.
Like it can take you, the mind, Mercury can take you, it's these 3 stages. It can take you, either keep you grounded, you can choose to be on the earth, be grounded. It can take you to the underworld, where exactly you're thinking all of this weird stuff, or it can take you to the heavens, way above, where you no longer relate to the physical realm, which is also, to me, it's a little bit like the Luciferian perspective, all the way up, so much you can't relate anymore. And the Ahrimanian, or, you know, the underworld and stuff, or the middle path.
The middle path is the equanimity, is that not too high, not too low, just, well, the end goal of my mentorship is that I am in presence 24/7, focusing in on breath, and just keeping a check on that mind and not letting that mind take over, because, you know.
And you said the magic word, the breath, because Mercury is
the lungs.
rules air.
The lungs, rules the lungs. Mercury, yeah. Gemini rules the lungs, sorry. Yeah, Gemini rules the lungs.
So it's like associated with the air signs, because I mean, also it's air travel. It's like, you know, so it's so interesting to me how alone this practice of, yes, going about our day, yes, utilizing the mind, but staying connected, anchored to the breath. It allows us to stay connected with all of these perspectives, but yes, in a grounded manner, not going so far up where it's like, you know, you're being abused in a relationship, but you're like, oh, there's no problems here, everything's fine, I can transcend anything, you know, and you stay in the abuse because it's like kumbaya. Or you go into the depths of, I am not worthy of love, I'm never going to, so what's the point? So it's the extremes, and it's the middle path. So wonderful. Where can we find your program?
What program is that?
Where can we find your program with the meditation, and even the water meditations? But
on my website, which is in the description box, but I can send that to you anyway. Wonderful. But we might do the water program together, because I've left it shelved for a little while, and the reason is because people haven't been ready yet to consciously drink from their water. How many sips you take of your water when the course is a 49-day course, and I've got all these YouTube videos that not mine, of course, because I don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's already been enough study from Dr. Emoto, but I've gone further back into other sciences and what have you. Even before Dr. Emoto, we knew scientifically, but it was all kept hush hush. So with the program, you know, we're just joined as a community, whether it's on probably on Patreon would be the easiest, and there's something to keep you focused and educated, and we come together once a week on a Zoom call to share our experiences. But if you imagine speaking to your water, every drink of water that you take, you're loving on that water, and we're made up of water. So you're actually programming the water that's entering your body, and you're loving on yourself I don't have to tell you to go to the mirror and look in your eyes and say, I love you. You're taking that time to be conscious. And the reason I shelved it, and I've done it 3-4 times, it was getting the applicants, because people's minds, back to Hermes, because of this scrolling business and all this busyness that people are distracted in, it was too big a ask. It was too big a ask at this stage in humanity's evolution. And even Pam Gregory has hooked into the girl with the lady who photographs the water. And, you know, she's been at that for 10 years. And now she's starting to get some airplay on YouTube through Pam, I believe. You know, and so they're just learning about it now. Oh, yeah, don't you know that we can program water? Oh, yeah, you got to go and have a look at that. And then they don't do anything about it. They just know that they can program the water, and we can actually speak to the water, and we can redirect the water, because once you have a relationship with that water, it's there. It's like having a pet. You have, you know, I've been doing this since 2014, so it's no big deal. I do it every week. You know, I have 3 15-liter gallon water containers, you know, and that's the water that I drink. Yeah, so I don't need to buy water purifiers and all of that, but you have to believe. You, like, for it to work, you've got to be 100% in. Yeah, I know that. It's shown me. It's talked to me back. Water talks back to you. Water will guide you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a river. I live by a river, and I've meditated 4 years now with this river. I've surrendered so much to the river for healing. It speaks back to me. I totally relate to that. But in this sense, I would like to invite everybody who's listening to exactly not just take everything that you have heard on this podcast and just, you know, put it at the back of your mind as one more information, because I feel, but to act on it, because I feel in the spiritual community, we are sometimes very Mercury led, where we like to collect the information and to listen and to keep the mind busy with listening to this podcast and that podcast, but we stay spiritual students and not spiritual doers. So let's see that we act on the information that you learned on here. Just a little invitation.
Yes, that's true. And we will be back, because we very much identify with each other's journey, and we've got big age difference, you know. So that's how I know that I'm on the right path, because I'm comparing points with Elina and our viewers. You know, when you are ascending, there is a point where you are alone, like, and you're aware that you are alone, and that is part of the journey. By the way,
yes, I feel that in a lot of ways. I'm so grateful that I had to be such a solitary rider for my journey, because everything that I came up with, or everything that I learned, it was from my own journey, and it wasn't, you know, because I read that book. If you ask me, like, I have so many people, they're always asking me, oh yeah, have you read that book and that, and I'm like, no, I don't know any books. I don't know any, like, even YouTube videos, you know, and stuff like that, that most people are just, you know, I like to listen to podcasts, but it's like so limited, because usually I'm just going to sit by the river, hands over the heart, speak to my angels, get answers, or be given processes or things that when I was in the thick of it, it came to me as a download. Do this, say this, channel the energy like that. My whole energy healing business was based in the whole thing that in my dream state, I had Archangel Michael visit me, which I know sounds very controversial, but Archangel Michael saved my life multiple times. But I had my archangels coming, and all through the night, we were practicing energy healing. They literally showed me how to direct a golden strand of energy, and that's where it started from. You know, and back then it was just for me, and then I found the courage inside of me to use my man as my guinea pig. But you know, and eventually through the years, I was helping so many people offline, and all of these people gave me the confidence that, you know what, Elina, you should be offering this. And if you are doing it and it consumes all of your time, maybe you should also be asking for a payment so you can, you know, pay your bills to be able to continue to provide that. So I think
that was
it's a
something that we
blessing.
had to work through, was that payment,
Yeah,
you know,
I
for
think
your
it's,
services, you know,
yeah,
because of the woundings that we brought in from previous experiences, soul experiences. You know, that payment, you know, that's been controversial,
yes.
but you move past that. You move past that hurdle. There's a few hurdles, and in yeah, I forget what I was going to say, but there's a few hurdles along your path of ascension, and we'll probably do a video about that too, if we go back to, you know, your earlier
We
years,
have
and
so
you
many
can
video
speak about
ideas.
your well, you know what I'm finding, especially from my channel, because a lot of people have come to my channel through A Dark Night of the Soul, and that's how I started the channel, was documenting the first conjunction of Pluto to my natal sun, the second conjunction, the third conjunction, and that brought
Yes,
so
yes.
many. I mean, those videos have been watched 5,000 times or something, and they're me without having any experience, you know, just sort of being real, just being open and honest and real and vulnerable, you know. So you may know this as well, but I remember back 2012, probably earlier than that, that I was given messages, and there were messages coming from the soul group on Facebook that we're in, that there will come a time when our services will be required. And I think, you know, Pluto is just ingressed. Only just, we got the next 20 years, you know, where people will be reaching out, you know, be in pain, be questioning. And astrology, I think, you know, is going to become very, very popular.
Yes, and I agree, my love. And not only that, but even if you are someone who is not running a spiritual business or whatever, the very wisdom that you acquire as you move on is going to be useful to someone who you happen to bump on or happen to have a conversation with on the bus station or whatever. Because that's why I wanted to say, it's such a blessing that we go through a very large, sometimes, portion of our journey being alone. So if you are alone, if you are in that stage, please know that this is so important and you are not left out, or you haven't done it wrong or whatever. The world hasn't collapsed on you. Well, maybe it has, but it's not because you did something bad, but it's because you need to stay in this isolation to ensure the integrity of the wisdom that is coming through to you, because you are going to use it to help others. I was just talking with you, Monique, the other day about how a lot of the crises that we see out there in the world happening now, it's things where I feel, oh, I've been through that like 5 years ago. Why? I always felt like we experienced things way earlier, some of us, and we experience things earlier, and then you see, just when you have recovered and you have gotten all the wisdom, then you see this exact thing playing out there in the collective, and you're like, oh, now they are going through it, but I've already gone through it, so okay, I'm here. And when people come to you, it's not even like, oh, let me tell you what to do. No, it's just a genuine, hey, you know what, this and that helped me, try it.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
you know, so I think, just for those who are listening, who are in it, just know that there's a life on the other side where,
and they're not alone, like people like yourself and myself, and especially all these Aquarians. I mean, could you imagine all of the Aquarians having Pluto conjunct their natal sun? I mean, they were born to be individuals. They were born to be the sun, be light, and be the role models for the rest of the world, these Aquarians. However, at the moment, they're going to go through the dark night. So, you know, there'll be a few Aquarians that you'll see risen up in power. They've either done the work, or they, on the other side of that, their ego will fail or fall. Yeah, they'll fall with, you know, with their ego. But you know, this is where we're headed. This is the new earth. You know, this is the new earth, and there's many of us
I have a lovely
out there.
client. I have a lovely client and friend. Shout out to Michaela. Maybe she's watching it. She's Aquarius sun, and I was noticing this exactly what you're saying, right? Like, it's like wonderful opportunities. At least the way I see it, she's rising big time, and I'm so happy for this. But exactly, if you look at the backstory of such individuals, you will see that they had to do the tough work in childhood. Like it's a little bit like the Saturn return. Everybody was telling me, oh, your Saturn return, you're gonna be humbled. And I'm like, girl, I've been humbled since day one. Saturn return came and I was given all of these blessings, and I was like, thank you.
Because you've done your work. Yeah, I received a child, actually. I created a child from my first Saturn return. Now I'm actually in my second Saturn return. And it's nowhere near as hard as that first one, you know, not because I've done the work. I mean, I imagine my school mates and what have you, you know, that haven't clicked in on a spiritual seeking journey. I mean, they're suffering with diseases, and their grandkids are in trouble, and their kids are in trouble, and you know, that's another story. But I am actually going to have to go because we've been going for a bit, but we only got to Mercury, so we will continue this conversation through the planets until we get to all of them, because it's very grounding, you know, this simple information about the sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and onwards.
Exactly. I think only Venus escaped us, right? No, and Mars, yeah.
And Mars, Venus and Mars, yeah. But we got through those first three, so that's good. And we've added a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So we hope you've enjoyed it. And us, we hope you enjoy us. We enjoy each other. We very much identify.
Absolutely. Thank you. It was so nice. Thank you for having me. I really think it was important also, all of these in between segues and wedges that I think these are the kinds of conversations you normally would have, like, not on a podcast, but it's exactly the conversations that a lot of people need to hear. If I was hearing such in between things when I needed that, I would be like, oh, thank you.
So, me too. I'm not alone off. I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. Yeah, the mind, Mercury, you're crazy. See? All right, my darling, thank you for having me. And thank you, everybody. So drop your comments in the box. That's great for us. YouTube loves that. We don't really care, but you know, we're there to help you if there's any questions.
Yeah, it does help to hopefully push the video so that other people can benefit from this information.
For sure.
Thank you all so very much. I speak blessings over us all, and have a beautiful, beautiful time still ahead. We'll see us soon again. We'll return. Until then.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.